is Meredith Elliott Powell, and you know what time it is? It is still time for Thrive. Everything that you need to know to turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage. I'm hanging out here with my friend and my guest today. Super excited to be welcoming Stu Heinecke to the show. Welcome.
Oh my God! Thank you. You know, I'm usually sitting here listening, so I was like, oh, I'm just going to listen to the show.
All right. Well, we got a power pack show today because I really want to dive in to your strategy about how to grow your business like a weed. Stu, for those couple of people who don't know you, why don't you tell our audience just a little bit about you?
Yeah, because I'm sitting here thinking if I was in the audience, I'd be saying, how does that even go together?
Exactly.
Well, so yeah, I have this crazy background, and it's getting crazier because of the weeds now. But I'm one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists. I'm also a marketer, and I've used cartoons in marketing my whole career. I've worked to help give clients unfair advantages through those campaigns that I create. I mean, cartoons are wonderful devices for getting attention and causing people to respond to you, and so. But all of these I realized long ago that that actually everything I've been doing in my career, probably everything you're doing in your career as well, we're always trying to give clients unfair advantages. And it turns out that's a big part of the weeds model.
It is. So tell our audience how you came up with the weeds model.
I used to live in LA, and so I was driving down the freeway, Santa Monica Freeway. So there's 6 lanes of traffic going this way, 6 lanes of traffic coming the other way, and a 40-foot wide concrete median in the middle. And it was back when cars used to move, because I don't think they do anymore on the freeway. But so we're moving along at 60 miles an hour, and I suddenly noticed something that that we see all the time. Really, it was a dandelion growing out of a crack in the concrete in the median, and I could have just driven by and just thought, oh yeah, I mean, not even thought about it actually, but. That particular time I did, I'm just looking at it, and suddenly just this world of wonder opened up to me because I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, look at that. How did it, for one thing, how did it get there? Well, we know how it got there. I mean, it got there because the dandelion seeds they float around and they probe every possible opportunity for taking root. But it's significant that the dandelion was there and not, let's say, an apple tree or a rose bush or a petunia, because those plants don't have what it takes to be a weed. They don't have quite the unfair advantages that weeds do. And so that was part of it. Then part of it also was it just looked happy. It just looked like it was kind of bouncing around in the smoggy turbulence, I suppose, but it had those yellow flowers that they look happy, and then the seed pods, and the seed pods are blowing seeds around, and it just looked like it was happy to be there running its process. And I just thought, I hope that I can live up to that example. And then I was by. That was it.
And then you were done. You were all bought in, right? So talk to me a little bit about, you see this dandelion, it's growing through the concrete. What can we learn from weeds, and what does that do to align with our business?
And so the thing is, as I saw that dandelion, I thought also, I just wonder, what are they doing? And do they have a model, for example? And is there a model that we can use in our businesses? And it turns out, yes, they have a model. There is a format that they all use. They all use the same thing, and we can certainly apply it to our businesses. And in fact, I would say you and I are so close on some points because of your book, Thrive. And I was when I was reading Thrive, I was saying, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to you because part of what weeds do is they resist. Well, let's see, they have strategies for, let's say, thriving. I was going to call it resisting earlier, but really they're thriving while they're being disrupted. I mean, they're nature's disruptive force, certainly, or certainly one of them, but they also have to deal with being disrupted, which is exactly what we're also nature's disruptive force.
Absolutely.
And we also have to deal with disruption. And so some of us deal much better than others, but weeds just do it according to a process, and that process is just programmed into their DNA. They don't have to be trained. They just do it. They run it like a program, like a computer would run a program.
So what is it about them? What are the strategies? You point out so many great ones in your book. What are some of your favorites, or what are some of the most surprising things you learned?
Well, God, one of them, I think if weeds could talk, one of the things they would tell us is that, we don't have brains, so we don't have emotions. You do, and man, do they get in your way? They certainly do, and we would tell you then that first of all, we just tell you deal with what is. So put
Yeah.
all the emotions and all of those pieces aside, all of the things that are distracting you, and deal with what is. And I think that theme came through really loud and clear in your book too. Actually, if you
Yeah.
don't do that during disruption, you're dead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a huge one. And sort of related to that, they would tell us, you know, um, you also you let your emotions lead your actions. Why don't you try it the other way around? Now, I think
Mhm.
everybody who works out knows this really well because they
Yeah.
have to push themselves and be disciplined to go work out, let's say every morning or every other, whatever their schedule is. And they may not feel like it. That's the emotions kind of kicking in and disrupting it, but they do it anyway. And when they do it, and I know you know this because you're all the high functioning people I know are very, very active. And I know you're out playing tennis and golf and every chance you have. And I'm sure that just sort of manufactures new optimism for you and new excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am such a big believer in years ago, I heard a great interview with Gabrielle Reese, the really infamous volleyball player. And they were talking to her about what it takes to be an elite athlete. And she said, of the many things she said, is one, she said, I work out every day, whether I want to or not. And she said, sometimes my workouts are amazing and sometimes they're not any good at all. I'm just going through the motions, but I did it. And I think that idea of doing things even if you don't want to do them. I can't tell you how many times I'll have a tennis court booked at 6 a.m. and I don't want to go play, but I booked it. I have to go play. I know this is what it takes.
I would say that's pretty hardcore to get up. I mean, you're not getting up at 6. You're playing at 6. So
Yeah.
you're really devoted. And
Yeah.
that is that's what it takes I think that's what it takes to be a high functioning person.
Hmm. I would agree.
But it also it's actually also a big part of the weed mindset, if that makes any sense. You were asking about the model, and the weeds, they leverage a fierce mindset and unfair advantages against collective scale, and they do it according to a process that's both ancient, it's been honed over millions of years, but it's also a living process that actively deals with whatever challenges come up. And when that happens, it's all programmed into the next generation of weeds. So yeah, but what you do every morning, or what everyone does every morning when they work out, is a huge part of actually of what weeds say we should be doing.
So let me ask you this. So according to the weed mentality, it gets programmed into their DNA survival because it really is interesting. I mean, when you think about concrete and the concrete is big and it's strong and it's tough and it's, in this when the sun beats down, it's hot. There's no water getting through there or anything. And then you have this little dainty dandelion coming up right in the middle of it. And and basically, you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, it gets programmed generation of dandelion down to generation of dandelion. They get stronger and stronger and stronger. How does that get mirrored into us as business owners and business leaders?
Well, we need to be first. We need to be following those examples, and we do. I think if someone is doing really well in business, they're naturally doing a lot of these things that are in the weeds, in the weeds strategy model. But I would say also though that I think one of the things that it causes us to do is you look at, let's say, the elements of the weed mindset, which are optimism and aggression and resilience and persistence and urgency and adaptability. Those things have to be part of our approach to life, really, but certainly our businesses. And then we'll notice that weeds never do anything without an unfair advantage. So dandelion that has the seeds that fly around and they probe every possible opportunity to take root. Well, that's an unfair advantage. I mean, oaks don't do that. well, actually, not a lot of plants don't do it quite as well as they do. There are others that do it even better, but that's an unfair advantage. And so we need to cultivate unfair advantages in our businesses. And then we need to be approaching our businesses from a scale mindset, and we don't. I mean, just naturally, we operate under one-to-one leverage. So if we're doing everything in our businesses, we're holding it. That's pretty familiar. If you're doing everything in your business and you're part of the deliverables, then you're holding it back.
Yeah.
In general, I mean, you can't. The more you productize that whatever it is you're doing, the more you can gain help. You can create either a team of people, your own team of people, or you can team up with others. But just this sort of this, well, I don't want to call it mistaken. We're taught to be self-reliant, and
Okay.
good. I mean, that's how we survive. That's how we work. That's how we make our way and succeed in life and in business. But at a certain point, an entrepreneur who is self-reliant to the point of that everything has to be done by the entrepreneur will never scale anything. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely, because you need other people in order to be able to scale, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can't do it alone. You just cannot do it alone. So if you are oriented that way, then you're holding yourself back. So there are all those elements of the weeds model that really apply to growing our businesses. But again, I've got to say, there's that one level in the weeds model, the acronym WEED, inspired enterprise expansion and domination strategies. And that's 8 levels of strategy to help you create new unfair advantages. And the segmentation level of strategy is exactly what you wrote about in Thrive. And you wrote about it beautifully and with a lot more detail than I wrote in my book. And just your story when you had I think it was the flood, either the fire.
Yes.
Or the flood.
Yeah, it was a flood. My husband and I, his dental office was flooded out.
Yeah. And so you turned it into an opportunity to
Yes.
business. And it was amazing to read the story and say, you were being a total, well, you are a total weed, actually.
Yeah.
You were certainly being total weeds then, because you were acting in a way in the same way that weeds would. The weeds just, if they get cut down, they just go right back to work on their process and keep growing back. They're not depressed about it. They're not angry about it. They don't care. They're just running their process again. And in your case, and in many of the cases that you cited in your book, people they're running their processes, but part of it also is they're being quite adaptable.
Right.
Changing their process. It's evolving. And
I always say you need to be married to being passionate about what you do, but don't be passionate as to exactly the service that you deliver. I mean, right? If you had been, in the fixing, horses and buggies, where would you be right now? Correct. So yeah, so being, overcoming those things. Stu, what do you think the biggest challenges that business owners, why does this so knock us off our feet? Why have it's interesting. COVID seems like far less of a challenge than when you compare it to if you'd asked us a year ago that we'd be facing inflation, war in Europe, rising gas prices, all those things. I guess I want to know what you think the biggest challenges people are facing right now. And then on top of that, why do we get stuck when the concrete starts to grow up around us?
Well, you mentioned a bunch of things. One thing is we're always being disrupted. I mean, we strive to be disruptors in our markets. That's a prized thing, but we're also always being disrupted. I don't know what it is. I don't know if things change more. I think it's sort of our bias. We think that they change more quickly than they did before, but there have been world wars. There have been really tragic disruptions in life. And so you don't win in that situation if you're not, I mean, if you're just stiffly saying, well, this is how we've always done it, and this is what we're going to do. Because if you were a restaurant during COVID and you said, well, we're just going to, we'll just have to keep serving people until we can't. in, let's say, the dining room, then you would go out of business. You had to adapt. You had to evolve and pivot. And that was part of your question. I think I forgot the rest of it.
Well, I think
about the concrete growing around us.
Yes.
Well, again, that's disruption. I think all of these are disruptions. So right now, as we record this, we're hearing about recession, and as you mentioned, we're facing inflation, and there's great uncertainty in Europe because of the war. I mean, what will that turn into? Will it die down, or will it turn into World War III? We don't know. Nobody knows. But if we're being weeds, we just say, well, okay, fine. There are things we can't change. Obviously, I don't know that they think that, but there are things that we can't change, and we've got to keep going forward, but we've got to do it in a smart way. We've got to at least be proactive in terms of, if we're going into recession, what does that change in our own business's picture? I mean, what's different about it? And what do we need to do to counteract that? Again, I think that you told so many great stories in Thrive about companies doing this. It was funny because a lot of them seemed to be from Boston, or they were very old companies that changed over centuries. And some of them are multiple centuries old, and they changed the things that they did, things that they produced, the markets they responded to, or the things that they solved for their markets. Maybe it was the same market, but they were new solutions to pivot with the times. And we have to do those kinds of things to survive. I mean, that's what happens when the concrete goes in around us, I guess. I mean, the recession will feel like that, and we have to do things to pivot.
Why do you think that people have such a resistance to it?
I think it's scary. I think it's emotional. I think it's deeply rooted in our emotions. And so if suddenly your market is drying up, all of your customers are telling you, no, we don't need you anymore, or we can't buy from you anymore, that's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary. And fright is an emotion. And we get tied up in it. Frustration would be another one that we get tied up with very easily. And if you don't set that aside and just deal with what is, I know that I'm drawing a lot of examples from your book, but when you went through the thing that you went through, being flooded, and it disrupted your business, you could have had a completely different reaction than you did. But your reaction was kind of almost like improv, improv, but it's different. I don't know, disaster improv. Okay, this happened. But I
love that, and you got to do something with that disaster improv.
but that happened, but that's good, and here's why. And then you got to answer why, and you did. Right. You answered by improving your business.
One thing that I think really helped in the flood was my husband was really paralyzed during that. It had been his life, it had been his business, it had been everything. And he, when he walked in and he saw his children's photos floating in 3 feet of water, I mean, he lost it. It just is, but I think to have somebody I was not emotionally vested. I mean, certainly I was devastated, I was worried, but it wasn't my hard work for the last 25 years. It was the hard work of somebody I loved and cared about. And I think having that support system, of somebody else who can be strong, maybe when you can't be strong, is very helpful. But I wonder, do you think that people are somewhat programmed to be weeds? Does it help to have had adversity early in life? What are sort of some of your thoughts on that?
Well, if we're only talking about adversity and dealing with adversity, then yeah, I think anyone who has dealt with it before and they survived it. I mean, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and that's true there. You become more and more seasoned to deal with it. I mean, if we have a recession coming, there are some of us who are going to say, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And others are going to be saying, "Okay." They're going to do the disaster improv, and they're going to say, "Okay, this is happening, but that's good, and here's why." And why I'm going to make it a positive thing. And I know you've done that. You did that with your speaking business also during the pandemic. I mean, it changed everything about speaking in person. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to me that there's one thing that I found. I know when I started looking at this is some people just when uncertainty hits, their brain just goes into fight mode, right? Like they just and I'm programmed like that. I kind of fall apart later. But people like me are very unfocused. We're just grabbing at anything, doing anything. Or people they're more of a flight or they shut down or they don't know what to do. And the problem with that is, I mean, they don't do anything stupid like I do stupid stuff, but they don't do anything, which can really be a hindrance as well because the marketplace is moving so fast. If you don't move with it, you're truly going to be left alone. And one thing that I got from reading your book is that basically, kind of like with mine, is what you provided was a methodology. Is basically, if you don't know what to do, do this. Would you say that's true?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. If you don't know how to create unfair, well, let's say, first of all, recognize what your unfair advantages are. The book will help you do that. And if you don't know how to create more or find more or acquire more, it'll help you do that.
Mhm.
It'll definitely help you do that. And there's the weed mindset section. We're actually going to do a training on that as well. But the weed mindset section says, look, the weeds are saying, deal with what is, set your emotions aside, let your actions lead your emotions. Particularly if you're in a bind, let your actions lead your emotions. Let your actions lead you out of it or through it. And so that's part of it. And then the other part of it, and one of the things that really stood out to me is because I'm writing it and then I'm reading it again because you have to go, it's a long process to edit. It's an amazing thing that the book ever comes out. But what I realized is that, first of all, I was saying, oh my God, I've been making all these mistakes in my business, according to the weeds. And one of them is, I've been kind of a lone wolf, and a lot of the things that I do. I mean, I create campaigns to help sales teams break through to their top accounts, but those campaigns are really, really hands-on, labor-intensive things. It's almost like we're producing prototypes every time a campaign piece goes out. So it's very, very, not only is it labor-intensive, but it's intensive of my labor. And then therefore I hold it up, I hold it back. And what I realized was what I really need to do is focus out and team up with a lot more people and create multi-channel scale. And I'm doing that. Well, you and I you're in my authors group, and
Right.
that because I'm saying I need to do this. I mean, I must do this. I'm coming to the NSA event, and I'm joining NSA.
Oh,
But
great.
the event, is it in Memphis or Nashville?
No, we're going to be in Nashville
Nashville.
in July. Fantastic. So
Well,
excited to be there.
I'm going to come because of the same reason. It just weeds command you, go do this. You've got
Right.
to plug in, and you help people, you help each other, and all become stronger as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I so agree. I know that you and I are on the same page in the sense that I passionately believe that when crisis hits, it's one of the best times to grow and expand. But how you do it is differently. It's why you need a methodology. And I think this whole idea, just the just the mindset of a weed. I mean, you're so right. I mean, you and I both came up with our methodologies from doing nothing but being observant, from noticing that, wow, when everybody else is failing, why is this or that making it? And there's so much to be learned from that. Now, Stu, believe it or not, we're coming to the end of this show, and I always end with
Rick,
two questions, and you can ask them and you can answer them in any order you want to. Number one, what is your greatest piece of advice to anybody out there really struggling with uncertainty as uncertainty mounts in today's marketplace? And then how do people get a hold of you, get hold of your book, learn more about you and the weed methodology?
Sure. Well, struggling with uncertainty, I would say one of the things you have to do is buy Thrive.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good one to do. Um, but the weeds will give you up an entire methodology, or you could say the basis of forming a process. And if you don't have a recorded process, then start setting one up, because that's just a prerequisite for having a business. And deal with what is. I mean, the weeds, they're so simple. Just deal with what is, but do it. And if you do that, and if you look at what the new, I mean, if you're going through disruption, what the new circumstances are and what new opportunities it opens for you, they're right there, and they're always there, but they're right there, and you can pull right on through that and thrive. So then to contact me, I think the thing that I'd love to have you do is stop by my author site, stuheinecke.com. And if you visit and sign up for my list, you can get the first 2 chapters of my book, How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed.
Great. I was hoping you would have it there. I'm traveling,
Yeah.
so I don't have it on me.
And in fact, you can even, I'm going to stand up, because you can even buy T-shirts like this.
Be a chief
weed officer T-shirts and others. But I'd love to have you stop by my author site, or connect with me on LinkedIn and mention that you saw me on Thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, Stu, your book, your methodology, everything is just so interesting and so great. And there's so much to learn there. I love the fact that you're putting yourself in a position to really help people who may want to take action, who want to move forward in all this adversity, but are struggling to do so. So I hope you will come back on, talk again. Maybe we'll do one of these live from Influence this year.
Oh, that would be fun.
In July.
Thank you so much, Meridith.
That would be great. All right. Thank you again for joining us. Thanks to our fantastic audience. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Thrive, turning uncertainty into your competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.